September 23, 1996. The Hershey Park Arena in Pennsylvania. The World Wrestling Federation is in trouble. WCW is winning the ratings war. The NWO is taking over the world. But on this night, Jim Ross, the voice of reason, the most trusted man in the business, looked into the camera and made a promise that shook the industry. He promised the return of Razor Ramon and Diesel, the two biggest stars of the new generation who had defected to the enemy just months prior. The fans in the arena gasped. The viewers at home leaned in. Could it be? Did Vince McMahon steal them back? Was the NWO invasion failing? What followed was not a triumphant return, it was an insult. It was arguably the most embarrassing promotional tactic in the history of the company. It was the moment Vince McMahon tried to prove that he owned the characters, regardless of the human beings playing them. Welcome to the WrestleVerse. Today, we aren't just laughing at fake Diesel and fake Razor. We are investigating the desperate lawsuit, the corporate arrogance, and the backstage chaos that led to the WWE's identity crisis. This is the story of the Great Imposter Experiment. Part 1. The Exodus, May 1996. To understand the fake experiment, we first have to understand the loss. In the mid-90s, Razor Ramon and Diesel were the pillars of the company. Bret Hart was the excellence of execution. Shawn Michaels was the showstopper, but Hall and Nash were the cool factor. They were the giants. But in 1996, the business was changing. WCW, backed by Ted Turner's billions, began offering guaranteed contracts. Money that Vince McMahon, at the time, simply claimed he couldn't match. In May of 1996, the unthinkable happened. Hall and Nash gave their notice. They were leaving for the South. This wasn't just losing two employees. This was losing the cool. Their exit culminated in the infamous curtain call, Madison Square Garden, where they broke character, kayfabe, to hug their friends Shawn Michaels and Triple H goodbye. Vince McMahon was furious, not just because they broke the rules, but because he knew they were taking his creation, his intellectual property, to his direct competitor. When Scott Hall appeared on WCW Nitro, he didn't use the name Razor Ramon, but he acted like him. He talked like him. He used the toothpick. He oozed machismo, and that is where the lawyers got involved. Part 2. The lawsuit, IP vs. reality. This is the part of the story most fans forget. The fake Razor and Diesel weren't just a bad creative idea. They were a legal strategy. Vince McMahon filed a lawsuit against WCW. The argument: copyright infringement. The WWF's legal team argued that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were essentially acting as Razor Ramon and Diesel on WCW television, confusing the marketplace. They claimed that the mannerisms, the catchphrases, and the gimmick belonged to Titan Sports, not the wrestlers. WCW's defense was simple. These guys aren't playing characters. That's just how they are. Scott Hall is that guy. Vince McMahon needed to prove a point. He needed to prove to a judge and to the world that Razor Ramon was a costume. Like Batman, like Mickey Mouse. If Michael Keaton stops playing Batman, you don't cancel the movie. You hire Val Kilmer. You put a new actor in the suit. Vince truly believed his own hype. He believed the brand was stronger than the talent. He thought, I made them stars. I gave them the names. I can give those names to anyone and the fans will cheer because they love my creation. It was a belief born of arrogance, and it was about to be tested in the most public way possible. Part 3. The heel turn of good old JR. To sell this lie, Vince used his most credible asset, Jim Ross. For years, JR was the voice of the fan. He was the honest play-by-play man who loved the sport. But in September 1996, the WWF turned him heel. The storyline was blurring reality. JR claimed he had been mistreated by the WWF. which was true. He had been fired and replaced briefly. He claimed he was the one who scouted and signed Hall and Nash, also true. And now he claimed he was bringing them back. Think about the psychology here. The WWF was using legitimate backstage grievances to build a storyline based on a lie. They were manipulating the audience's hope. Fans in 1996 didn't have Twitter. Rumors were flying. Are they coming back? Did the WCW deal fall through? Jim Ross sold it with such conviction that people believed it. By using JR, Vince thought he added legitimacy to the recast. If the most honest man in wrestling says Diesel is coming back, you buy a ticket. But there is a fine line between working an audience and insulting their intelligence, and the WWF was about to cross it with a monster truck. Part 4. The Casting Call. Finding the Imposters. So, if you're going to recast two of the most charismatic wrestlers in history, you better find incredible actors, right? Well, the WWF went looking for physical lookalikes. First, they needed a Diesel. They turned to a man who was already on the payroll, languishing with a terrible gimmick: Glenn Jacobs. Jacobs was a physical specimen, huge, athletic, intimidating. But he was stuck playing Isaac Yankem, Jerry Lawler's evil dentist. They shaved his head, dyed his hair, and put him in the leather pants. Visually, he was close. He was actually a better wrestler than Kevin Nash, technically speaking, but he lacked the swagger. Then, they needed a Razor. This was harder. Scott Hall's charisma was 1 in a million. They found a Canadian wrestler named Rick Bognar, who had worked in Japan as Big Titan. Bognar was talented in the ring, but he wasn't Latino. He wasn't from Miami. He was a nice guy from Calgary, trying to do a Tony Montana impression. The preparation was minimal. They were given the costumes, told to study the tapes, and sent out to fool the world. It was a recipe for disaster. But in Vince McMahon's mind, it was a masterstroke of intellectual property law. Part 5. The Grand Reveal, the Uncanny Valley. The music was right. The vest was right. The gold chains were right. But as soon as Rick Bognar stepped through that curtain, the air left the building. It's a psychological phenomenon known as the Uncanny Valley. When something looks human but isn't quite right, it creates a feeling of revulsion. Fans immediately knew. This wasn't Scott Hall. Scott Hall was 6'7". Bognar was shorter. Hall moved with a lazy, natural swagger. Bognar moved like he was counting steps in a dance class. The reaction wasn't boos, it wasn't cheers, it was a low, confused murmur. You could practically hear thousands of people asking the person next to them, "Who is that?" Jim Ross was doing the heavy lifting, screaming that he had delivered on his promise. But Vince McMahon, on commentary, played the role of the skeptic to try and deflect the heat. It was a bizarre dynamic. The company was insulting the fans' intelligence while simultaneously winking at them. When Bognar took the microphone and tried to do the accent, "Hey yo, Chico," it was over. The illusion shattered instantly. It sounded like a bad Saturday Night Live sketch. Part 6. Enter Big Daddy Cool, the impossible task. Then came Diesel. Glenn Jacobs had a slightly better chance. He was physically massive, actually slightly taller and more muscular than Kevin Nash. With the sunglasses on and the long hair from the nosebleeds, you might be fooled for a second. But Kevin Nash's Diesel wasn't about the moves. It was about the attitude. It was the hair flip, the glove adjustment, the too sweet hand signals. Jacobs was playing a monster. Nash was playing a rock star. When fake Diesel raised his fist, nobody raised theirs back. Backstage, the locker room was uncomfortable. Many of the wrestlers were friends with Hall and Nash. They saw this for what it was, a petty, vindictive move by the boss. Imagine being Glenn Jacobs. a talented athlete trying to make it in the big leagues, forced to wear another man's skin because your boss wants to win a lawsuit. It was humiliating. Part 7. The Audience Revolt. Go Away Heat. In wrestling, there are two types of heat. Negative reaction. There is heel heat, where I pay money to see you get beat up because I hate your character. This is good. This makes money. Then there is go away heat. This is when I change the channel because I'm offended that you think I'm stupid. The fake Razor and Diesel experiment generated nuclear go-away heat. Ratings for the segments dropped. The live crowds turned hostile. They began chanting "fake, fake, fake" during their matches. They weren't booing the bad guys. They were booing the script. They were booing Vince McMahon. This is crucial to understanding the collapse of the WWF in '96. WCW was giving fans reality with the NWO. Invaders using their real names, breaking the rules. WWF was giving fans panto, actors in costumes pretending to be people who were on the other channel. It made the WWF look old, out of touch, and desperate. Part 8. The Savior in the Shadows. Stone Cold Rising. While this disaster was unfolding in the main event scene, something ironic was happening in the mid-card. Vince was obsessing over owning characters like Razor and Diesel. But the fans were gravitating toward a guy who had no costume, no gimmick, just black boots and a foul mouth. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the antithesis of the fake Razor experiment. He was authentic. The failure of the fakes proved a valuable lesson. You cannot manufacture cool. While Vince was trying to prove in court that he created the stars, the fans were proving that they chose the stars. The fake Razor and Diesel run dragged on for months, culminating in a tag team title shot at In Your House. 12. It's time. Yes, they actually put these imposters in a pay-per-view title match. It was the nadir of the new generation, the rock bottom. But as they say, you have to hit rock bottom before you can rise. Part 9. The Quiet Death, Royal Rumble, 1997. By January 1997, the experiment had run its course. The WWF stopped booking them in main events. They were relegated to the mid-card, then to the opening matches. Their final major appearance was the 1997 Royal Rumble. Glenn Jacobs entered at number 23. He lasted nearly 18 minutes. Rick Bognar entered too. But by then, the commentary team had stopped trying to sell them as the real deal. Even Vince McMahon sounded bored calling their action. Shortly after the Rumble, the contract for Rick Bognar expired. Glenn Jacobs was sent back to developmental to be repackaged. There was no farewell match, no loser leaves town. They simply vanished from television. The WWF realized that every second these characters were on screen, they were advertising the competition. They were reminding fans, the real cool guys are on the other channel. Part 10. The Tragedy of Rick Bognar. We often joke about fake Razor, but for the man behind the costume, it was no laughing matter. Rick Bognar was a talented heavyweight. He had success in Japan's FMW. He could move, he could work, but the fake Razor stigma followed him like a curse. Imagine being a musician and the biggest record label in the world hires you, but only to be an Elvis impersonator. When the gig is over, nobody takes you seriously as an artist anymore. Bognar tried to continue his career, returning to Japan and working in the Indies, but in North America, he was forever marked as the imposter. Rick Bognar passed away suddenly in 2019 at the age of 49. It's a tragic reminder that in the war between billionaires, between Vince McMahon and Ted Turner, the casualties were often the soldiers on the ground. Rick Bognar did exactly what he was told to do, and his legacy paid the price. Part 11. The Redemption of Glenn Jacobs, the Birth of Kane. Glenn Jacobs, however, had a different destiny. After the failure of Isaac Yankem and the humiliation of fake Diesel, Most wrestlers would have been fired. But Vince McMahon saw something in Jacobs. He saw loyalty. He saw a man who took the worst creative ideas and tried his hardest to make them work. In late 1997, Jacobs returned, not as a copy of someone else, but as a new, original monster, Kane. The contrast is poetic. As fake Diesel, Jacobs was trying to wear Kevin Nash's skin. As Kane, he wore a mask that hid his face entirely, yet he projected more emotion and charisma with a tilt of his head than he ever did as Diesel. Kane became one of the longest-tenured legends in WWE history. It proved the ultimate lesson. The audience will forgive a bad gimmick if the talent is undeniable, but they will never forgive a lack of authenticity. Jacobs survived the fake era because deep down, he was the real deal. Part 12. The Legacy. Who won the lawsuit? So, what happened with the lawsuit? Eventually, the WWF and WCW settled. Vince McMahon essentially won the right to the names Razor Ramon and Diesel, but he realized they were worthless without Hall and Nash. Hall and Nash, meanwhile, acknowledged that the WWE owned the intellectual property, which is why they used their real names for the rest of their WCW run. But the real victory came from the failure. The embarrassment of the fake Razor experiment forced Vince McMahon to change his philosophy. He stopped trying to create cartoon characters that he could own like action figures. He started letting wrestlers be turned-up versions of themselves. Stone Cold, The Rock, DX. These weren't costumes, they were personalities. The failure of 1996 paved the way for the success of 1997 and 1998. The company had to hit rock bottom creatively, literally trying to clone the past before they could invent the future. The fake Razor and Diesel saga remains the ultimate cautionary tale of the wrestling business. It stands as a monument to corporate arrogance, a reminder that you can trademark a name, you can copyright a logo, and you can own a costume, but you cannot trademark charisma. You cannot copyright connection, and you cannot own the soul of a performer. What is your memory of this angle? Did you believe JR when he said they were coming back, or did you change the channel to Nitro immediately? Tell me your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this look at the WWE's biggest embarrassment, hit that like button and subscribe to the WrestleVerse. We're digging up the skeletons that the WWE Hall of Fame likes to ignore. We are WrestleVerse, and I'll see you next time.